When you set out to start a new blog, there's like a trillion different options that you can use for your content management system. And that is the software you use to actually build your site and publish content. You have WordPress, you have Drupal, you have Joomla, you have Squarespace, you have Tumblr and Blogger and all these different options. I'm going to be super straightforward and tell you right now to use WordPress. Now, of course, you can do your own research. You can determine what works for you. But I do believe WordPress is the best choice for a content management system for the vast majority of new bloggers. There's really no contest. WordPress is the most popular CMS in the world, and for good reason. It's free, it's open source, it's easy to use, it offers an endless world of extensibility through themes and plugins, and because so many people use it, there's so much documentation and support. It's really just the best choice. Now, before I go any further, I want to explain the difference between WordPress.com and WordPress.org. WordPress.com is a fully hosted service you can sign up for to build a blog or website without having to manage the underlying technology yourself. WordPress.org is where you can download the WordPress software and install it on your own web server. I really like this explanation from the Daily Post blog on WordPress.com. Having a blog or website here on WordPress.com is a bit like renting an apartment in a complex. You don't have to worry about the pipes freezing in winter, you don't have to mow the backyard, and you don't have to fix the dishwasher if it breaks. All of that is your landlord's job. But on the other hand, you can't install skylights, knock down a wall to combine two rooms, or rent out your spare bedroom without the landlord's permission. Similarly, here at WordPress.com, we support your site and we take care of all the updates, the backups, the security. But since all of our users share this platform, we don't permit you to use plugins since they can introduce security risks or outside themes. And there are a few terms of service that we require our bloggers to follow to keep WordPress.com nice for everybody. When you move to a self-hosted WordPress site, it's like buying your own house. You can knock down the walls or build an extension. You can rent out your garage for practice space to a local band. You can keep a lion in the backyard. But if your heat goes out in the middle of winter, you have to fix it or hire someone who can. If you self-host, you can install all the plugins you want, but if one of them breaks your site, you have to figure out how to fix it. Luckily, WordPress.org has a great support forum with many knowledgeable and helpful volunteers. You're also responsible for performing routine updates and backing up your content, but the only rules you're bound by are your own. My recommendation, and what we'll focus on in this course, is self-hosted WordPress. It's just better suited for serious blogs for a variety of reasons, one of which being that most of the revenue models we'll cover later cannot be done on WordPress.com. The next few lectures will cover the process of installing and setting up WordPress, but if you decide to go with another platform, don't worry, there's a lot more to this course than just WordPress, so feel free to skip ahead. If you've decided on a name for your blog, it's time to register a domain and get a web hosting account. The domain registration process is pretty straightforward. Just go to the registrar of your choice, look up the domain you want, add it to your cart, and check out. Side note, many hosting companies also sell domains, so if you'd like to get your domain and hosting from the same place, you can totally do that. As for hosting, you'll find there are several options. There's shared hosting, which is ideal when you're just starting out because it's cheap, and in fact, most blogs can continue to run well on shared hosting for quite a while. Then there are virtual private servers and dedicated servers, which give you more power and dedicated resources that you don't have to share with other customers. That's something you might consider as your blog grows and needs to support a larger audience. There's also managed WordPress hosting, a service increasingly offered by many of the big hosting companies, as well as a couple of dedicated WordPress hosts such as WP Engine and Synthesis. These are used by a lot of serious bloggers who don't want to deal with things like site performance and backups, and they're worth checking out if you fall into that category. Here's some of the web hosts I recommend. In this lecture, we're going to talk about installing WordPress. Most web hosts these days offer one-click WordPress installation right through the control panel, which is super easy. So for most people, that's the way to go. The process is going to look a little different depending on which web host you use. What I'm showing you here is how to do it in cPanel, which is the control panel software that a lot of web hosts use. The first thing you need to do on any web host is find the app installer. So in cPanel, it'll usually be under Software. And here you'll see it says Softaculous Apps Installer. Find something that looks something like that. I know in DreamHost they just call it a one-click installer. And you'll click on that and see some kind of dashboard like this. It may be a little more simplistic, but generally you'll see a list of apps. WordPress will almost always be the first one because it's so popular. And all you have to do is click install. Once you've done that, you'll see a page like this where we can enter some information about your WordPress install and get it set up. So first you want to choose the protocol. Now generally you're going to choose HTTP here. You can also choose HTTPS if you have SSL set up on your server. And then you can also choose whether you want www dot to be part of the URL or if you just want HTTP. So I'm going to go with HTTP. Then you choose the domain. If you only have one domain, it should automatically be here, or you can choose it from the dropdown. So I'm going to go with example.net for this example installation. In directory, this is the folder where you're going to install WordPress on this domain. So whatever you put here, it's going to be example.net/WP or example.net/blog. Or example.net/WordPress. If you don't want it to be /anything, then you delete that and it'll install it directly on example.net. So I'm going to leave it blank, and you most likely want to leave that blank as well. Site settings. These are pretty self-explanatory. You want to name your site. I'm going to call it My Example Site. And then your site description, I'll probably delete this later, but I think the installer requires you to have some kind of description here. So we're just going to leave my WordPress blog. Admin account. Again, pretty self-explanatory. You want to create a username and a password. And then you want to enter your email address. This is where you'll receive notifications from your WordPress install. Choose your language. Limit login attempts with Loganizer. We're going to check this, and I will explain exactly what that is and what it does a little later. You don't really have to dig into the advanced options here. And then you can select a theme if you want to. We're going to talk about themes later and how to actually find themes from within the WordPress dashboard. So I'm just going to leave this blank and let it install the default WordPress theme. Now at the bottom, if you want, you can email installation details to a particular email address. You can enter your email there to receive the login URL and all that stuff. And then you can just click install. And again, this will look a little different depending on which web host you use, but it should look pretty similar. So here we have it. It says, congratulations, the software was installed successfully. So it'll show you your URL and your administrative URL. So this will be your site. We'll go ahead and open it, example.net. And we should see a blank WordPress site here with the default theme. Looks good. We have our Hello World post there. We can go back. And then the administrative URL is example.net/WP-admin. And this is where we can log in to our WordPress site. And here we are. So that's all there is to it. You may need to adapt those steps a little bit to your web host, but it should look something like that. In this lecture, I want to give you a quick overview of the WordPress dashboard to make sure you understand where everything is and how it all works. This is going to be super basic, so bear with me if you're a little more advanced. I just want to make sure you have a good understanding of how WordPress works so we can dive deeper and use it to build some cool stuff later in the course. So let's start over here with the main menu. You'll be using this menu a lot to navigate between different admin pages in WordPress. The first thing you should notice is that our current page, the dashboard, is highlighted and expanded, and it has a couple of submenu options underneath it. The same is true with the rest of the menus here. Just hover your mouse over each option to expand it. So after the dashboard, we have Posts, which is where you manage your blog posts, Media, which is where you'll find any photos, videos, or audio that you've uploaded to the site, Pages, which are a little different from Posts. These are your permanent static pages, like your About page or your Contact page. Comments, that's where you can manage and moderate the comments people leave on your site. Appearance is where you manage your themes and the overall look and feel of your site. Plugins are basically extensions that add various functionality to WordPress to make it do exactly what you want it to. Under Users, you can edit your own profile and account information, or you can add other users to the site with the exact editing privileges you want them to have. In the Tools menu, you'll find things like import and export tools, which allow you to move content from one site to another. Settings includes all the global settings for WordPress and your site itself. Loginizer Security is a plugin that the one-click installer automatically activated for us. Plugins can add their own menus to this panel, so that's why that's there. And finally, you can collapse this menu right here to give yourself a little more workspace, and then just click that icon again to bring everything back. Now let's take a look at the admin bar at the very top of the page. We'll just start from the left side and work our way across. So the WordPress logo here is something you'll probably never use, but it doesn't hurt to have it there. If you click it, you'll get information about your current version of WordPress, and you can also go to wordpress.org, read the documentation, visit the support forums, or send feedback. The next item here is just the name of your site. If you click that, it'll take you to your homepage. Next, there's a comment button with a little number to let you know how many comments are waiting for your approval. And then we have the New button, which is probably what you'll use the admin bar for more than anything else. You can use these options to add a new post, media, page, or user. And finally, if we jump all the way over to the right side, it says Howdy and then your username. That's just a quick shortcut to edit your profile or log out. Now let's zoom out and take a look at the main dashboard page itself. When you first create your site, you'll see this big box at the top that says, "Welcome to WordPress. We've assembled some links to get you started." So it basically just gives you some easy shortcuts to the essentials. Pretty useful as you're getting started, but if you want to get rid of it, just click Dismiss and it disappears. If you want to bring it back, you can go up to Screen Options, and by the way, you'll find this on just about every page inside WordPress, and check the box next to Welcome. Now, of course, you can also select or deselect any of these other options to show or hide whatever you want. And if you want to customize your experience a little more, you can drag and drop each of these dashboard widgets to wherever you want them. And while we're on the subject, let's take a look at these widgets and what they do. At a glance tells you some quick information about your site, the number of posts, pages, comments, along with the version of WordPress you're running and your theme. Activity shows what's happening with your site right now. You can see your recently published posts and recent comments. Quick Draft lets you type in a title and a little bit of content to save it as a draft. So if you have a quick idea for a blog post, you can use that to make sure you don't forget. And then you have the WordPress News widget, which is basically just a feed of updates from the official WordPress blog. So I guess that's it. That is the WordPress dashboard in a nutshell. Now that you're somewhat familiar with the WordPress interface, we're going to jump down to the bottom of the menu here and edit some settings. Let's start with our general settings, which are the most basic controls over your WordPress site. So as you can see here, you can edit your site title and tagline at any time. Below that, you'll notice you can change your WordPress address as well as your site address. Now first, let me warn you that you almost never want to edit your WordPress address on this screen because it will break your site and lock you out unless you move your WordPress files to the new address immediately after changing that. Your site address is a little different. You would use that if you wanted your site homepage to be different from your WordPress homepage. So for instance, if your main site is example.net and you have WordPress installed at example.net/blog, you would enter example.net here. So when people click on your homepage link or your logo, they go back to the main site. That's kind of a rare use case, but it's nice to have if you need it. Most of the time, though, you'll want to leave both of those fields alone. The email address here is where all of your administrative notifications go. So when WordPress updates automatically or when a new user is added, you'll be notified at this address. Speaking of users, you can specify here whether you want people to be able to register and join your site without you adding them yourself. And then you can choose the default role here. Subscriber is usually the smartest option because they have no editing privileges. Next, you can edit your time zone. Just choose a nearby city or the appropriate UTC offset. And then you can edit your date and time format. This determines how your site displays the date and time on your posts and comments and things like that. And then you can choose the day you want your week to start with. That's just an organizational thing based on your preference. And finally, you can change your site language. So now that we're finished with this page, we're going to go back over to the menu and take a look at the writing settings. The first thing you see here is the default post category. Whatever you select here will be assigned to any post that you don't assign at least one other category to. This will default to uncategorized, which I think makes a lot of sense for posts that haven't been categorized. But once you've added some categories, you can change that to whatever you like. Default post format. Standard is the best option for most people here, and you can always change that on an individual basis from the post editing screen. I know I'm glazing over this a little bit, but we will discuss post formats later in the course. Post via email. This is something that isn't used very often, but if you'd like to set up an email address you can email content to and have it automatically published to your site, you can set that up here. And then we have update services. There's a service here called Ping-O-Matic that's automatically included, and anytime you publish a post, WordPress will notify that service, and it will notify all the major search engines so your site is discoverable. If you don't want that to happen, you can just delete that URL and leave that box empty. Moving right along, let's dive into our reading settings. The first option here determines what shows up on your front page. It's either your latest posts in a traditional blog format or a static page. So if you go with a static page, you can select which page you want for your front page, and then optionally you can select a posts page that will display your latest posts. For example, you could create a page called Home for your home page and set that as your front page here, and then you could create a page called Blog and set that as your posts page. For the time being, I'm just going to stick with the default setting, your latest posts. Next, you can choose how many posts appear on your blog pages, and that also includes places like your category archives and search results. Anywhere WordPress lists your posts, it's going to be limited to this number per page. The next option is the same general idea, but it applies to your RSS feed. Now, RSS isn't as popular as it used to be, but it's basically a way for people to read your posts in a feed reader like Dig Reader, for example. 10 is usually sufficient for that. Along the same lines, you can choose whether people who read your content with RSS get the entire post or just a summary. If you choose summary, they'll only get the first paragraph or so, and they'll have to click through to your site to read the rest. Search engine visibility. If you check this box, search engines like Google will not index your site. Most people will want to leave this unchecked for obvious reasons. Next, we have discussion settings. These settings govern the comment system on your site. So first, we have the default article settings. This is what happens by default, but you can always override these options on an individual post. Attempt to notify any blogs linked to from the article, and allow link notifications from other blogs on new articles. That is completely up to you. Basically, this just appears as a comment on a site, letting them know that another site has linked to them. Allow people to post comments on new articles. This is the default setting for all new posts, but again, you can always override that and enable or disable comments on an individual post. Comment author must fill out name and email. If you uncheck that, it'll allow people to comment anonymously. Users must be registered and logged in to comment. Pretty self-explanatory, just adds another level of security to your site. Automatically close comments on articles older than 14 days, or whatever number you specify. If you enable that, comments will be open until the post is 14 days old, and then they will be closed automatically. Threaded or nested comments are basically where you have a reply to a reply to a reply to a reply, and you can choose how many levels of replies can happen. The next option allows you to break comments into pages if you want, and you can specify how many top-level comments you want displayed per page. Next, you can choose what order to display your comments in, whether you want the oldest or the newest comments to be on top. You can set up email notifications to notify you whenever there's a new comment, or when a comment is held for moderation, or you can uncheck both of those to get no notifications at all. Next, you can choose how moderation works. If you check this first box, every comment must be approved before it shows up. If you check the second box, everybody has to have their first comment approved, but they can comment freely after that. And if you uncheck both of those boxes, all comments will automatically post with no approval process on your end. Hold a comment in the queue if it contains 2 or more links. This will help protect your site from spam, and I recommend you keep that at a maximum of 2. These 2 boxes are here for words, phrases, URLs, email addresses, and IP addresses that you'd like to flag automatically if they appear in a comment. So anything you add to this first box will hold a comment in your moderation queue, so you'll have to approve it before it goes live. The second box is for stuff where there's no chance of a false positive, because when anything in this box appears in a comment, the comment goes straight to the trash without even notifying you. At the bottom of this page, we have avatar settings. Pretty simple. Choose whether to show avatars, choose the maximum rating that's appropriate for your site, and choose a default avatar for people who may not have one. Media settings are super simple. When you're inserting an image into a post or a page, you have a few sizing options for how the image will be scaled and displayed. You can do full size, you can choose the exact dimensions, or you can go with one of these preset sizes, large, medium, and thumbnail. So you can set these dimensions to whatever works best for you, and you may want to return to this page in the future once you've kind of figured that out. Our final settings page is permalinks. This determines what the link structure for your site looks like. By default, it uses this plain option, example.net/?p=123, which is not very search engine friendly and not very human friendly either, because when I look at that, I have no idea what it is. So whenever I launch a new site, one of the first things I do is change the permalink structure to something that makes sense. My 2 favorites are post name, which is as simple and readable as it gets, and day and name, which includes the date of publication in the URL. As long as you've got the post name in your permalinks, the rest is totally up to you. And finally, you can also change the link structure for your category and tag URLs. So if I have a category called business, the page for that category would be example.net/category/business. If I wanted to, I could use this to replace the word category with something like topics, so then my URL would be example.net/topics/business. And the same thing applies for tags. One of the big choices you have to make when starting a WordPress site is which theme to use. WordPress themes make it easy to style your site without having to design and hand code it yourself. You just upload a theme file, activate it, and boom, your website has a brand new design. You can create your own theme or hire a developer to create one for you, but it's much easier and cheaper to use a pre-existing theme. And there are thousands available, so you should be able to find one that's just right. WordPress comes bundled with a default theme that gets an overhaul about once a year, and you can use that for your blog if you want to keep it simple. But since it is the default theme, it's used on a huge number of sites, so it'll be harder for you to stand out in the design department. When it comes to WordPress themes, there are free themes and premium themes. Most free themes are available from the theme repository on WordPress.org, which is also accessible directly through the themes section of your WordPress dashboard. From there, you can browse through the many available themes using filters to narrow your search. Then when you find one you like, you can see a live preview and install it on your site. For paid themes, there are a ton of different places to look. Just Googling is a good start, but one of the most popular places is ThemeForest, a marketplace where independent developers sell their themes. When you purchase a theme, you'll usually get a zip file that you can upload directly through the WordPress dashboard to install. Paid themes are often of a higher quality than free themes, but there are plenty of solid free themes out there if you're working with a limited budget. Choosing the right WordPress theme can be a time-consuming process, but it's totally worth it when you find a theme that makes your site look just the way you want. WordPress plugins offer a way to extend the functionality of your website without having to write the code yourself. Like with themes, WordPress.org has a repository of free plugins, which you can also access from the plugins section of your dashboard. For the sake of performance and security, it's not a good idea to load your site up with tons of plugins, but they can be a great solution to make your site do what you want it to. Here are a few examples of popular plugins. WooCommerce adds e-commerce functionality to your WordPress site. BuddyPress turns your site into a full-fledged social network. Contact Form 7 is the most popular plugin for adding contact forms to your site. Akismet monitors your comments and protects you from spam. Yoast SEO helps you optimize your site for search engines, and so on and so forth. We could talk all day about different plugins and what they do, and we'll talk about several specific ones throughout this course, but for now I just wanted to introduce you to what they are and where to find them. Before you install a plugin from WordPress.org, check out the reviews to see what other people are saying about it. Does it do what it claims to do? Does it cause any problems or conflict with other plugins? You can also purchase plugins from third-party vendors, but that's not something you'll need to do often, as most of the functionality you can think of is already covered by free plugins on WordPress.org. If you do decide to buy a premium plugin, do some research on the developer first to make sure they're reputable. WPMU Dev, for example, is an excellent source for quality premium plugins. One of the responsibilities that comes with hosting your own WordPress site is managing your own security and backups. This is a pretty dull subject, and a lot of people tend to put it off or assume it's not that important, but trust me, if your site ever gets hacked, or if you lose a bunch of data in some kind of catastrophe, you're going to wish you'd been prepared from the start. We won't spend too much time on this, but I want to go over the essentials so you can protect yourself. Let's start with the most basic thing: passwords. Understand that as the administrator of your WordPress install, your password is the only thing stopping an intruder from gaining unfettered control of your site and locking you out. So make sure your WordPress password is secure, like a complex mix of letters, numbers, and symbols that would not be easy to guess, and don't use it for any other site. On a related note, it's a good idea to use a password manager like LastPass to generate and store secure passwords for all of your accounts. All you have to remember is a single master password. LastPass handles the rest, and it's totally free. I also recommend you install a plugin called Limit Login Attempts. One of the simplest methods that hackers use to gain access to a site is a brute force attack, which is a trial and error tactic where a bot basically tries random username and password combinations over and over until it finally gets in. This plugin will automatically lock a user out after a set number of unsuccessful login attempts, protecting you from brute force attacks. There are a lot of plugins out there for backups and security, but there's one in particular that I recommend more than any other, and that's VaultPress. Now, it is subscription-based, so it'll cost you anywhere from $5 to $30 a month, depending on the plan you choose, but I'd say it's well worth it for what you get. So what is VaultPress? It's a service that automatically backs up your data and monitors your site for malware and security flaws. If you need to restore a backup, you can do it basically with a couple of clicks. And VaultPress is made by the same people who make WordPress, so they really know their stuff. Getting set up is as easy as signing up at vaultpress.com and then installing the VaultPress plugin on your site. If you can't justify the cost of VaultPress yet, there are also free plugins such as WordFence for security and Backup WordPress for backups. As long as you have something to prepare yourself, you're good. As your blog grows, you're going to need a way to monitor your traffic and other key performance indicators. Google Analytics is kind of the industry standard for this, and I encourage you to install it on day one. It's pretty straightforward to set up. Just go to analytics.google.com, sign in with your Google account, and create a new analytics account for your blog. It'll give you a snippet of code to copy and paste, and you'll want to make sure it's included on every page of your site. Some WordPress themes have a special field in the theme options panel where you can enter this, but you can also do it with a plugin like Google Analytics by Monster Insights, which adds the tracking code to your site and displays some of your stats right within the WordPress dashboard. I'm also a big fan of Jetpack, which is a plugin that provides a bunch of WordPress.com features to self-hosted users. One of those features is a real-time stat tracking interface that's simpler than Google Analytics and great for getting a quick overview of your site's performance. Jetpack also has a ton of other useful features, so it's totally worth checking out.